So my name is Braden Walker, and I'm talking to you about how artifacts play an important role in preserving history and presenting history as a whole. So in World War II, we had the Pacific battles, which one included the Solomon Islands, which were a strain of battles it was kind of like island hopping that the Americans did with the Japanese, and Solomon Island was one of these. So at this island, we had the Americans who invaded this coastal kind of holding of the Japanese, and so at this place today, you can find tanks, you can find aircraft, you can find ships, just buried all over the place. And with these, you can kind of piece together on what happened during this battle and just the outcome of it. So, for example, at the Solomon Islands, the Americans pushed out the Japanese and managed to control it. So once they finally left, you can find a surplus of Abrams tanks. Not Abrams, sorry, that's modern day. You can find just tanks from that time period. You can find a couple of Japanese tanks that were kind of left there in reserve for in preparation for the upcoming invasions. And so all that's just kind of left there. And so another example of places that kind of fall under this thing of artifacts is a place called Ardures-sur-Glane, which is a French town that was completely bombarded out by the Germans and just completely reduced to rubble. So in this town, you could find old chassis of cars, you could find books, you could just find all these personal items that these people would have had during the time period, and they were kind of forced out by these German occupations. So you just don't have they just kind of lost everything, and you can kind of see that through the representations of these items and just how shelled this place is. And some examples of how artifacts kind of pertain to the preservation of history is through literature. One example being Mein Kampf, and you can kind of tell what was going through Hitler's head through this, and not really sympathize, of course, because of what he's done, but just kind of see his mental process and the degradation of a mental state of a horrible, despicable man as he inflicted these horrible acts on a group of people. Another example is on the opposite side of Anne Frank's diary, which kind of exemplified the treacherous acts of these Nazi regimes and just Hitler's outdoing. So in that book, we have a young girl who's kind of taking down notes of everything that's been going on, and it ultimately leads to her death, but it's just kind of a first-hand account of just what goes on in this treacherous period. So with this, history items can artifacts can kind of just show things that would be easily missed through as time progresses. We can kind of see for example, what caliber of guns they fired by finding shell casings on the ground. We can find where the position they were attacking from, depending on which way you can find the remnants of bodies, and you could find helmets, where they are located in, for example, the Solomon Islands. You can kind of determine just how this strategic maneuver happened, which they came together on the Japanese. So you can just kind of determine the outcome of this. Well, not the outcome, just kind of how this played out just from the items. But in conclusion, these items kind of create just a way for people to look back and reflect on these events, as well as just kind of perceive how these events took place. And it just kind of helps for better clarification and a better understanding of these events. Thank you.